What is the fastest you have ever seen a new coworker get fired? As a teenager, I worked at a bowling alley. Within an hour, a new girl was fired on the spot for dropping a ball on the foot of a complaining patron. 4 or so hours. When I was 18, I got a job at a grocery store. Along with 3 others, we all started training together. On the first day we were training in the evening, and one girl asked to go home. She said her head hurt. They said fine. She clocked out, went to grab a grocery cart and started filling it with beer and liquor. The store manager walked over and asked her if she was having a party. She said yes, didn't even try to come up with an excuse. Just, "Yeah, I am. So I needed to leave early on my first day." Basically, he fired her. He didn't show up the first day, second day, or third day. I had to work a double shift for 3 days straight. Not fun. I answered the phone when he finally called in, on the 4th day. He said, "I'm going to be honest with you. I've been in Orlando. My parents paid for a small vacation as a reward for getting the job. Would it be okay to start next week instead of this week?" Guy got hired. Went through training and all that jazz. First day on the floor. He disappeared for 3 hours and then came back high as fuck on like meth or something. A manager found him in the bathroom aisle, staring at himself in the mirror. Said manager looked at the cameras after firing him. The guy was there staring at himself for at least 30+ minutes. Edit to clear up some questions. I worked at Home Depot. He was in the aisle where we sell bathroom countertops and medicine cabinets. We also have mirrors in this aisle and that's where he was. Not in the bathroom, haha. Before their first day on orientation, I got hired for a manufacturing job through Manpower, a temp agency. Me and a friend of my wife were both supposed to start on Monday at the plant for a week-long orientation. She got into a fender bender on her way to orientation, and called them to say that she'd be a bit late. That she just needed to wait on the police to give a statement. The manager told her not to bother ever coming in. Girl was torn up. She took pictures and the police report in to the hiring manager. Tried to explain things to the company HR managers. But no dice. She was fired before ever clocking in. Worked in a grocery store for a while. New guy took a lobster out of the tank and removed the elastic bands on its claws. Then proceeded to put it back in the tank. The thing murdered all the other lobsters in the tank. 3 hours into the first shift. Guy lost it serving an annoying customer in a grocery shop. Throw a cabbage at her. The manager came and told him to go home cause he finished there. He wasn't surprised. I was standing next to him. It was an entertaining day. I worked construction. We had 2 new hires that were friends starting the same day. Boss told one take a coffee order and come back. Took everyone's money and said he needed his friend to go with him cause it was a big order. They never came back. A man was hired to do stock at a tea store that sold lots of delicate china. Manager walked into the back on his 3rd day and saw him just throwing boxes of teacups and teapots. Instantly fired. I called a temp agency to get someone to help me count inventory. They sent a guy over with a cast on his arm. That was my first WTF, but I went with it because we were just counting parts. Then I came back from lunch and this dude was in my office chair zoned out and drooling on himself with a can of air duster in his lap. I kicked him awake and escorted him out of my warehouse. Never used that temp agency again. A 19-year-old kid got hired to work the seafood counter. See him twice and then never again. Asked a coworker what happened. He had closed seafood one night and was walking out of the store and the 5 pounds of crab legs he'd stuffed down the back of his pants fell out in front of the closing manager. Edit. It was at a Publix. No. It was not Jameis Winston. New guy started on Monday and was gone by Friday. The guy hit some racking in the warehouse with the forklift. Boss saw him do it. And the guy decided to lie about it when asked if he knew what happened. Coworker. Smoked every 40 minutes for 10 minutes. Then asked the boss if he could leave an hour early because he didn't take his lunch break. As my boss said, "Sure you can. But you don't need to come back." This was just a summer job at a fast food place. We had a new girl start and within 2 days it was apparent she was an idiot and everyone knew that. You could already see the manager questioning his decision. Then on her 3rd day of work she said she couldn't come in because her mom was in a car accident and in the hospital. Turns out that's an easy thing to disprove in a relatively small town. Corporate chain restaurant. New server. Aged mid-30s. Third day he was working, we had to fire him mid-shift. Why? Dude went into the public restrooms, with other guests clearly in there using the urinal, and started doing lines of blow-off on the edge of the sink. About 35 minutes. I hired a guy to work for me as quality inspector for merchandise headed to Walmart and Target. He bragged about everything he stole from his last job during training and how they paid him more than I did. Well, I'm not holding him back from all that money, so I had some big guys escort him off the property. I was fired on my second day as a line cook at a Mitzel's restaurant in Washington state back in the 90s. Turns out I was hired just to threaten the job security of a longtime line cook with an attitude problem, to keep him in line. He got the message and apologized to the manager. And I was fired for breaking a yolk when flipping fried eggs one time. I'd been a line cook for a few years by then and thought I was doing pretty good. I was taken out the back door and terminated on day 2. Edit. This really seems to be blowing up. Happened in Oak Harbor back in mid-1990s. So yes, I did find another job since then. I was pissed, but got over it quickly. Cooking for a living was hard work. Standing in a hot kitchen for 10 hours at a time. Going home splattered with grease. Getting yelled at by waitstaff and management. I don't do it anymore. Thanks for all the hugs awards, guys. This guy hadn't even started yet and just had his introductory email sent out to the whole company, which ended with incredibly explicit details about himself. He got fired before he even started. Email. Edit. Wow, this is blowing up. I don't have a lot more context I can give as it all happened so fast. Somehow the company deleted the email from our cloud inboxes when this was sent, but not before a colleague grabbed a screenshot of it first. He was going to be a Tier 2 tech for the IT company I work at a couple years back. He supposedly apologized profusely, saying his friend played a prank on him, but the damage had already been done. This was a while ago at my old job. New guy gets hired as a busboy. He was super annoying and tried to insert himself into everyone's conversation whether they wanted him there or not. It only took a couple of hours for the whole restaurant to hate him. I was working the bar and he kept eating the bar fruit. I personally didn't care, but the manager did. Manager comes over and tells him to stop eating the fruit. He looks the manager in the eye and eats another piece of fruit. Manager says, "Really?" Followed by, "Come with me to the office." New guy promptly replies with, "All right man. Calm down. I can tell you got that big dick energy for a good reason," followed with cliché wink and nudge from his elbow. In front of me and like 4 other employees. I wanted to slam my face into the ice bin. It was so cringy to witness. He promptly walked out the front door 10 minutes later without his uniform on anymore. The worst thing about it was the manager was an insanely laid-back guy. Hell, the whole restaurant was insanely laid back. You really had to try hard to get fired from this place. Had he not thrown in that big dick line, I'm almost positive he would have just gotten a slap on the wrist and kept the job. Guy had been working a few days at a barn. Decided to smoke right by bales of hay. Manager saw him and fired him right on the spot. At farms, you don't fuck around with fire. First day of work. He walks in. Says, "What the fuck is up, dumbass," to the guy that parked next to, didn't touch, his new Camaro he bought since he got hired. The guy was the CEO of the company I used to work for. On visit to our branch. Literally 10 minutes into his shift he was signing release papers. Coworker quit his job. Great job. Great pay. Great benefits to work in a radio repair place. I mean, gotta do what you love, and he was also a big radio enthusiast. Got fired the first day on the job for stealing parts for his own radios at home. Took him over a year to get back with us. Surprised they rehired him. He then got fired for being a security risk about a year or so later. Day 1 of training. Within the 6th hour of a 8-hour shift. Worked in a old crank handle service elevator at a private residential condominium, for very wealthy people. We told him just shut up and stare straight ahead. Don't speak unless spoken to. 'Cause old rich people are mean and don't care about you. Well, what's the new guy do? Starts a conversation right away and asks the resident, "How much money do you make?" Edit. To be more clear. It was a 1920s skyscraper in downtown. The IT crew at a large government office worked on a ticket system, meaning that the government workers submitted their problem online and one of the IT guys would pick it up on their end. The new guy just started his first day, logged into a computer at an empty office, and submitted a reinstall entire OS request so he could spend all day there. The manager decided to check in on him before lunch to see how he was doing. And he was completely asleep. Fired before they even finished his hiring paperwork. 5 days. My boss hired an executive chef. Dude didn't even know how to make a quesadilla. I used to do a lot of field work on site investigation programs. Basically we'd hang out on a drill rig while the drillers took rock cores. We'd log the cores, take photos, do some down-hole tests, etc. New engineer gets sent to site and gets assigned the night shift. Some people love night shift, but most people don't, hence sticking the junior with night shift. After 5 nights he calls the office and says he wants to come home because he's freezing and he hates it and he can't do it. Not clear to me if he quit or got fired, but it became plain pretty quickly that this job wasn't for him. I got pulled onto that program, and I asked the drillers what the guy's deal was. They had a propane heater in the back of their van, and despite repeated invitations to sit in the back of the van, Buddy just sat in his truck all night and shivered. In the middle of February, guy got hired. While going through orientation realized that his ex-GF worked there too. Turned around and walked right out the front door. Spent my summers in college working as a laborer for a construction company. Anyway, we were doing a bunch of renovation in an active hospital, so noise and dust were a huge concern. We were a small crew and just starting renovations on an area with a super tight schedule. So the company hired a subcontractor for some of the work. Enter these 2 clowns who show up to do some demolition work. Foreman gives them the talk about how they may be used to doing things a certain way. But this is an active hospital, so he'd rather the work take longer than for them to make a huge mess or a lot of noise. An hour later, we apparently got multiple complaints about the noise and the mess. So the foreman calls me up and says to go over there and clean up now, and that he'd be by shortly to see what the hell was going on. These dudes had dust and broken wall everywhere. I could hear them halfway down the hall, just smashing away without a care in the world. The foreman shows up and we walk into the room to witness this dude standing on a pile of rubble swinging a sledgehammer over his head at a brick wall that he's removed the bottom from. Somehow the rest of this wall is still hanging from the ceiling. I have no idea how. Guy wasn't even wearing a hard hat. Apparently oblivious that at any moment that wall might give way and crush him. The foreman lost his fucking mind on these guys. Kicked them out immediately. And got on the phone with their company and told them he didn't want to see these guys on site again. Lots of choice 4-letter words were used. Even threatened to fire the subcontractor entirely and get someone else to do the work. Heard this from a manager I worked with when I worked in fast food. There was this one kid who didn't show up for work. He ditched work often, so the manager called around. Couldn't get anyone to fill in his shift, so she had to fill it for him. A few hours into his shift, the dude ditching shows up with his friends and orders food from that manager. She fired him on the spot. Edit. These were my first awards. And y'all just multiplied my karma by 10. Thanks y'all for the likes and awards. Not sure if it counts as being fired, but a guy in our basic training threatened a drill sergeant with a bayonet. No idea what happened after he went to the hospital, but I didn't see him again. Couldn't pass the simple tests given at the end of new hire orientation. Yelled at test facilitator when she wouldn't just take the test for him. Guy showed up to work on his first day with the smell of alcohol on his breath. 7 a.m. When questioned he admitted to taking a couple swigs on the ways in to calm his first day nerves. Yeah. Fired on the spot. Worked here less than 20 minutes. New director starts. At lunchtime goes to cafeteria. Pays for the first salad plate, by weight. Then goes back twice for refills without paying. Cafeteria has cameras. Cafeteria manager talks to the partner in charge. New director fired before the end of day. Didn't like the boss and on the first day took a piss in the gas tank of his Jeep. Bragged about it and it was recorded too. A week. I worked in a bar and a new girl started. At work. She seemed a little rough but was fine. One day she finished a shift. Sat at the bar and ordered a red wine with lemonade and ice in it. Not really relevant to the story. Just shows she is clearly insane. Her boyfriend came in. They had a huge domestic in front of my manager and several customers, and she threw her drink over her BF and dramatically stormed out. First week. He's called over to the unstaffed truffle counter by a customer. Hasn't been trained in truffles. So he just grabs one from the display case and sells it to the customer. He doesn't know the display truffles are made of plastic, and the customer has already paid $90 for it when he realizes. Still not sure if it was an honest mistake or if he was planning to pocket the money. Either way, fired. I got hired as a long-term temp with one other person to do some basic data entry work at a major brand pretty much everyone has heard of. And it was at their corporate headquarters, so pretty prestigious. Anyway, we went through all of this onboarding stuff in the morning that required us to get photo IDs and figure out parking and all that stuff. Then after 2 or 3 hours we were introduced to one of the employees in our new department who began going over what we were going to be doing. None of it seemed overly difficult, and I figured that while it was new system I had never used before, I'd be able to work it out in a few days as long as I asked questions and took notes. And that was the thing that made me realize that the other person who got hired with me probably lied on her resume and was completely out of her depth. She didn't take any notes and didn't ask any questions. And whenever I glanced at her I could see flashes of panic on her face. Well, lunchtime came, and when we came back she said that another company had called her and offered her a permanent position and she couldn't work with us longer. Both me and the person training us knew what was going on, but I'll give the other lady credit for finding a way out without losing face too badly. The takeaway here is, yes, fake it until you make it can and does work. But you gotta be able to fake it. You can't fake faking it. We used to bet on which new hire would last longer than a week. Gets hired. Celebrates new job. Drug tested. Gone by lunch. My sister was fired one day one. My dad had his own small medical practice and would hire me and my sisters as our first job to be his receptionist and file insurance claims. So we could get some workplace experience before we went job hunting in the larger world. My older sister worked for him in high school for a year. I worked for him for 2 years. Then it came time for my younger sister to take over. I brought her to work to start training and said the #1 rule in the office was, at work he's not dad. He's the doctor and the boss. She sassed him in front of a patient her first day. With all the venom and sarcasm a teenage girl can muster when dealing with a parent asking her to do something. He fired her on the spot and I had to drag her out of there. Mom told her at least she'd get paid for the couple of hours she managed to be employed. Edited. My first wholesome award. Thanks. This is the opposite route here, but I found it amusing. My boss was out of town and I managed a tea shop near a Starbucks years ago. This kid came in, foreign, and said he was supposed to start today. We were hiring and I trained him, etc. My boss came back 2 days later and had no idea. The kid was in the wrong place, but he stayed with us. Hired on the spot without even applying. She was hired because the manager thought she was hot. Turned out she was 15 and unable to actually work there. New guy drove a forklift into a fire hydrant. In front of a safety representative for the company. His supervisor was called over. And he immediately tells the supervisor that he won't pass a piss test. As he used his only bottle of clean piss earlier that day when he hired in. Everybody standing there immediately burst into laughter. Which continued as security, also laughing, escorted him off-site. Even the supervisor was all smiles. Just gave him a pat on the back and wished him the best of luck. It was wild. We had a new guy come in. Go through all of the training on starting in our factory. Lockout, tag out and all of that stuff. Said he was an electrician. Then the very first job he was asked to do. He was found working on a machine with the power locked on. There are so many things wrong with that in an industrial setting. It's unbelievable. My boss pulled him out of the machine. Said you're too stupid to work here. And walked him out of the building. I think he was an actual employee there for 3 days at that point, and this was his first day actually on the production floor and not in training. Bonus story because I apparently can't read. We had a guy go through the interview process. Come in for his first day. Take a tour of the plant and go to his car and go home. It was a lime, no. Not the fruit processing plant. 2500F, 1400C, kilns that turn limestone into activated lime. The whole place is filthy dirty all of the time. Everything about that job sucked. I made it 4 months before the shit management and shit working conditions outweighed the pay. I am not surprised we had so many people quit within the first couple days or weeks of employment there. But this one guy was the fastest. Edit. Sorry. I saw fired. But for some reason no quit. Edit 2. For anyone confused about how he locked the power on. It was an electrical disconnect that mounts on the front of the electrical cabinet and has a handle that has a loop you can put a lock through. When it's in the up and on position, you can put a lock through the loop. But it doesn't do anything. This guy. After going through our worksite specific LOTO, lockout tag out, course where they actually show you how to use these electrical disconnects. And someone who claims to be an electrician, put the lock on one of these in the on position and climbed into a machine. Not to mention that one of the steps of LOTO is to verify that whatever you've locked out is off before stepping inside of it. Essentially, locking it in the on position wasn't the only failure of procedure. But it was the dumbest one. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.